go here then. Speaking of Trump, my conservative listeners, my conservative friends, are terrified of your candidacy. I see Democrats obviously are terrified of your candidacy because they won't even have primaries, right? So which side, if you will, historically a third-party candidate draws from somebody. They draw from a side, and we've seen that throughout history. What side do you think you draw from, and who do you think you benefit the most by running? Besides the fact I know you're going to win, right? But right, I know you're going to win. I know you're going to win. But which side do you think you pull from? I believe, I'll tell you my opinion. My opinion is I think you pull equally from both sides, which is why for people like myself who are kind of independent thinkers, even though I lean to independent thinkers, I think it's a good thing that you pull from both sides. But I want to hear from you. What side do you think you pull from?
I try not to spin stuff, so just giving the straight story. What I see, which you can see in everything else from public polling, is that right now I'm drawing almost equally from both sides, but I probably take, if I'm at 24 points, which is what the Harvard-Harris poll puts me, I take 2 extra points from Trump in that 24. I think that will change. I think the reason I take more votes from him right now is because I've been on conservative TV, because the conservative TV will let me on.
Right.
And the
conservative radio too. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
And the podcast, my biggest constituencies are people who listen to podcasts. So I'm beating everybody. I'm beating President Trump and President Biden decisively in all Americans under 45 years old. I beat them decisively in independent voters, which are now the biggest voting bloc. Mm-hmm. And it's because those are people who listen to podcasts. And right now, I'm not allowed on liberal TV at all. I'm going to go on Michael Schmerkanish's show this week, and that will be the first live interview that I've done on CNN in years. They've done 1 or 2 taped interviews with me, but then they cut them in the way that they want to cut them, and they're not going to let me talk unedited. And so this maybe is the beginning. And I asked my son. I have a 28-year-old son. I have 7 kids, but I have a 28-year-old son, Connor, and I asked him, and he's very educated, very informed, very curious. And I said to him the other day, I said, have you ever seen a television news program? And he said, no.
Right.
So he's 28. He's never sat through a single television news program in his life. He gets his news from other sources.
Right.
And that generation I do well with because they're watching long form interviews.
And they're able to hear everything.
They're able to hear it. And right now, if you just watch MSNBC and CNN and read the New York Times and the Washington Post, you're going to have a very low opinion of me because, I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'm anti-science, I'm, all of this. I'm racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Chinese, all of these.
Right.
I'm anti-Zionist.
Right. Right. Well,
right.
Interesting. Trump was called all those things also, and Biden never was, even though he has a longer history where you can see some of those issues.
Yeah. So I mean, if I was living in that information bubble, I would have a low opinion of myself. So. It's liberals who are watching. Those liberals who are watching that, they should be my strongest supporters because they all remember Camelot. They're all Kennedy Democrats. Right. That's where they came from. And it's the kids who have no memory of Camelot who are supporting me, but it's because they see long-form interviews and they say, oh, he's not crazy. He's not a quack.
Right.
He's actually makes sense, and he's not saying nutty things.
Let me ask you this.
I think they're going to have to put me on at some point, and I think at that point I'll begin pulling probably more from Biden, but I don't know.
So the answer would be you think you'd be pulling more.
I think it'll go back and forth.
Gotcha. Let's talk about.
By the way, can I say one other thing? Politico, you know, which is very hostile to me.
You're hostile to everyone that's not on the right, not on the
Yeah.
left.
Politico did an analysis because I outraised President Biden and President Trump in the last quarter. And so they did an article like, who are these people who are giving to Robert Kennedy? Right. And they did like a meticulous, you know, wormhole analysis on who every single one of my donors was, and mainly small donors. But what they found was that most of them had never given to a political campaign before. So they're people who felt dispossessed or disenfranchised by the political system and are not part of it anymore, and they're being drawn back in. And I think, you know, I'm proud of that I'm, like you said, that I'm bringing people into the process who had lost faith in our country.
So